It
was
started, man.
oh, okay.
I gave you the link to this on Skype, I think. And the link on the right, that's the link that is basically playing on YouTube. But anyway, hello guys, welcome to another chat. Sorry for the technical talk before we even started. I'm here with CS MGTOW, and we're gonna talk about, well, we call the chat personal development, but we want to have a chat and see what can theoretically a young man nowadays can do to get ahead in his life. And we want to give practical advice, something that's realistic and people can achieve without too much effort maybe. But I think you're going to talk about effort and how much effort you need to put in, at least at the beginning. And yeah, that's the topic.
For
Hello,
sure.
man, and welcome.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here with you, Nico. It's always nice to chat with you, my friend.
Yeah, and to you too, of course. So let's crack on. We will imagine in this scenario that we have an 18-year-old man,
Okay.
right? A bit of facial hair here and there.
Absolutely.
Can newly cast the vote. Hasn't been drafted for the army yet because there are no active wars going on. Good country, let's say, maybe let's imagine United Kingdom, United States. So with some potential opportunities out there for him. The traditional advice that I received by my parents was, study hard, go to uni, get out, get a job, make some money, have a family, and that's it. What would you add to that advice? Or
For,
what would you subtract more specifically?
that's a great question. I always say the advice that I would give any young person, particularly at the age of 18, or very specifically a young man, would be dependence, probably a little bit less so on what they would like to do, and a little bit more so on what they're actually capable of doing. Now, obviously, you're a very, very intelligent young man, so going to school, going all the way through, getting a medical degree, it makes a lot of sense for you. I know, for example, I probably couldn't have done that in the same way. So I had to take a slightly different path. So I would always kind of start from a point of saying, okay, make an honest assessment of your own capabilities versus your peers. You know, can you handle the rigors of, something in the STEM fields? If you can, it's usually a great place to work. There are lots and lots of jobs. And because of the difficulty of entering these fields, you won't have a lot of competition for your jobs. So that's where I always kind of take a starting point and then kind of go a little bit further from there. Does that kind of make sense to you?
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense to me.
Okay.
But I mean, I'm trying to be devil's advocate, let's say now, and imagining you're saying that if you're good when it comes to subjects of education or something like that, then you can theoretically aim towards going, university and coming out with a STEM degree, something that's useful and can give you money at the end. Yes. What if you don't know what you want to do?
That's a great question, and that's where I see a lot of young people get really, really bad advice. So often the advice is, go to university, do something. That a degree is somehow valuable in its own right. That because you magically have a degree, you'll be more employable. And of course, that's completely ludicrous. Unless a degree solves a very, very specific known problem for an employer, the thing is worthless. In addition, the degree will have probably been obtained with a large amount of debt, and not only to speak of the opportunity cost. Spending 4 years studying something is 4 years not earning a living, 4 years not getting experience, 4 years not building contacts.
Yeah.
So I guess a lot of the issues that I see is that young men, but particularly young men, are given just the absolute worst advice. Go out there and do this, and it often isn't that simple. What I did, I had a first degree, then I got a master's. Now looking back at my kind of working career so far, Yeah, I really didn't need either of them. And what I ended up doing is the advice I actually give to a lot of young men that, for example, if you find, look, you don't necessarily want to become a medical doctor or have the ability to become one, or some kind of an engineer, or a computer scientist of some sort. Simply go and find a job in a company. Even if it means you earn a little bit less money for a couple of years. And I guess this advice isn't going to be particularly popular with individuals, let's say, who own businesses. But I've always found that the easiest way to kind of get on your path in life and to start building your own financial freedom is to simply join a company, learn how a business runs, and particularly if it's most businesses are really, really simple to run. I mean, they'll have layers of management. What they do isn't particularly difficult to replicate. And after a while, simply set up a competitor with them. By that point, hopefully if you've gone into some kind of a sales role or business development role in the company, you'll have a very, very powerful core skill set, which is persuading customers to reach into their wallets and give you money. It's an incredibly important thing to be able to learn to do in the world. And once you've had a company pay you to learn that, then it's very, very easy after a couple of years just to simply set up in competition with them and do your own thing. And what you, that's the way I set up my first business. And then, I ended up having I ended up selling the business and did quite well financially out of it.
Yeah. I mean, that's the dream, theoretically speaking. And talking to friends of mine, or people who don't work in the medical field, they would say that their degree was basically access that gets them through the front door. Doesn't do very much to them. Yes, they do start on a higher wage than everyone else, but it doesn't do very much for them in terms of their career in any given company. So I would say from what I hear and what people tell me is, if you have, let's say, the opportunity to take a trainee post initially and then move on up the company, that is what you should do initially. And as far as not knowing what to do, if you are set towards starting, let's say, a degree in anything, let's say at a university, just because you want to have that experience in your life, or because you want to go to uni, or because you want to have
lots of sex in university.
Yeah. Whatever the reason might be. I mean, you can have lots of sex either way, right?
Exactly.
But if you do want to have that in your life, but you don't know what to have it in, I think it's really bad to simply move from 18 and go straight to uni and then just not know what to do or what degree to get, because you might start with an arts degree, then want to go to a science degree, or you might start in a specific science degree and then you can't move to the specific science degree that you want to move into. Transitions are relatively easy within university if you do have the, I guess, the grades in your A levels, which is I guess the equivalent is SATs maybe in America,
So.
but it's not as easy as it sounds, and you are wasting money. So you will start again from zero. You will be losing at least 9,000 per year just for the degree alone, excluding living expenses and all that. That definitely adds up to more than that. So
and the opportunity cost, the income lost by not being in the workforce for those years.
I mean, you don't have to go into the workforce for a long period of time, but you can take 6 months, 3 months in, and then take the rest, all the money, save all that money, and then just go traveling.
Absolutely.
I heard that from a lot of people. I heard that from many doctors. That's what they seem to be doing. And yeah, I think that is a valid path, at least for the very beginning. And then you should have an idea more or less of where you want to go. I have someone who's asking if gender studies is good. I think it's a valid degree, but I don't think you need a degree to work in Starbucks. So
for sure,
you can just work straight there.
I would also say, gender studies is great if you're like, if you're due to inherit, to a £5 million trust fund. You know what? Your parents have a lot of money, and you're going to be fine. Then, if you want to pursue gender studies, absolutely go for it. What I tend to see, and what I tend to see that drives a lot of young men to getting a degree is the fact that, of course, women won't date you. Hey, you walk up to a woman in a bar and she has a PhD in gender studies, and and okay, what's your degree? And oh no, I didn't study a degree. And I've seen this interaction between men and women, and of course, for reasons that we've all discussed, a woman won't necessarily be interested in a man like that, and I think that's almost the beauty of MGTOW, that kind of put that aside, and who wants to get married anyway?
Yeah,
So when you take away the fact that a woman's not going to fuck you because you don't have this piece of paper, you're actually in a place of far better freedom. Now, if you want to do a degree in a you find interesting, that's another thing entirely. But also, I think maybe it's also worth pointing out, particularly to a lot of the younger guys out there. I'm not saying don't get educated, but there's a huge difference in having an education and having a qualification. you know, Genuinely having a world-class education where you understand, the particulars of the industry that you plan to work in, whether it's from its technical side, it's, the financial model by, how the industry is run, or understanding how a company is run. So getting an education is absolutely essential. In fact, it's very, very difficult to achieve anything, to even put food on your table without education. A degree is not the same as education.
absolutely.
Uh, in fact, these days, from my discussions with people who are now in university, they're getting very, very little in the form of education. What they are getting is lots and lots of debt, lots of time to basically have sex. Again, look, I mean, you can fuck without being in uni, so I
Or
don't
in
quite get.
debt.
Exactly, exactly. So I would say get an education is essential, and an education will absolutely help you to where you're wanting to go. A degree may not necessarily do that.
Hmm. I mean, I can say from my experience and the way that it works within medical schools in the United Kingdom, if anyone wants to go, I mean, the job afterwards is tough, shit. It's getting worse. It's very busy, all of that stuff. That can't be helped at all. But you know that after 5 years of uni, which I guess that would put you 45,000 at least in debt
Yeah,
right now. Actually, 40,000 because you do get NHS bursary that supports you for years 4 to 5. Anyway, you at least are guaranteed a job afterwards. It's the
yeah,
same with nursing. It's the same with a lot of the, let's say, health related professions that that have to do that you can do in the UK. The problem is, I mean, and that's what I keep telling people when they talk to me about a university and where they should go, etc. I tell them not to look at the ranking or anything like that, or the city or wherever else they might be studying. There's always a little, let's say, bar where they rank the universities, etc., that shows about the graduate prospectus. So that shows you the percentage of people that graduate within that degree from that specific university that find a job. That's something that's important for someone that considers a degree from a university. You need to know what are your chances of finding a job in that field afterwards.
absolutely, absolutely. And also to be very, very aware of the fact that markets change.
Mhm.
So for example, one of my options when I was, going to university was, I had an option to, and it was something that I wanted to actually do at the time. I thought, shall I go and study petrochemical engineering? Because of course, in my country of Nigeria, we have a huge petroleum industry, and
Mm.
I assumed, hey, petrol's always going to be the thing. Well, right now, petrochemical engineers can't find work for love or for money.
Yeah.
There are so many of them, and also, I mean, petrol's just not that expensive, so there isn't a lot of, developments of new wells. So things absolutely do change. And maybe that's another issue that I see that a lot of men face, that men are taught to make to use data to make decisions. You know, how many jobs are there in X industry? And the problem with data is, of course, we only have data about the past. To make future orientated, or sorry, oriented decisions, we have to have extremely good theories. So what I like to do is to look at, you know, particularly if I, you know, in dealing with maybe an 18-year-old guy, to say, look, what are the things that are hard to automate? Things that people need, things that can't be outsourced. A job in IT, unless you're ridiculously good in IT, or you happen to get there maybe 10 years ago or something, you know, unfortunately, these jobs are very, very easy to outsource to the Philippines or, you know, other parts of the world. But for example, if you become a plumber, not only are there not very many plumbers, there's lots and lots of money to be made there, and your local neighborhood can't outsource the job of a plumber. They can't call a call center somewhere to say, okay, send me a plumber. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It literally has to be that local guy who's going to show up, get the job done, you know, get paid, and then just get on with his day. So those kind of jobs are particularly good for men, just simply because, well, quite honestly, I mean, you don't have to work with women.
Mhm.
And yeah, nobody can outsource your shit. So you can't wake up one day and find that you simply have no work any longer, which is happening to more and more men, particularly in the last recession.
I think specifically when it comes to blue collar professions, let's say, um, there is a big, let's say, need for them. In any big city, especially if you can imagine London, or, you know, I'm guessing New York or whatever in the United States, if you want to call a plumber or need to get some work done in your building, and you need to get a builder in, or someone that, you know, will do that for you, it's an easy job to get into as a trainee, and then you can run your own company. In the UK, you pay minimum tax when it comes to running your own company. There's 20% for all your earnings. You can pay yourself as an employee. You can have other employees under you. And then you can have trainees on top of that. And that's very easy to do, or people say that it's easier to do. And there is a lot of demand, very high demand. And that shows from the kind of weight that you, that you have to kind of like suffer through as a client for these people until they come and see you. And
Absolutely.
that doesn't go to blame any of these people. I'm not blaming them or looking it down at their profession. I think most of them make a lot more than doctors, not at the early stages of their career, but especially people who have been established and work there. They make a lot of money, and their job and the finances, whatever is left, you can invest it. You can get a degree in your spare time. You can do studying. You can attend other things. But yeah, it is a job that is a lot more demanding, you know, for your body. It is something that will wreck your body over a long period of time, and that is something that we need to keep in mind.
For sure, it's always a trade-off, right? You know, I'll give you an example. You know, I'm, you know, getting, you know, my house built in my native country, just so I have somewhere to kind of holiday every single year. And one of the kind of, you know, jobs I'm looking for, or one of the persons I'm trying to hire now, is a carpenter. Well, I didn't realize there actually aren't many of these guys around any longer. And
IKEA.
oh yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the thing now. So now I actually need a carpenter. I have to go out. I have to find one. There aren't many of them, and the prices they're able to charge are absolutely incredible.
Mhm.
But I literally have no choice because of the kind of furniture that I want to specifically go in my house. I can't buy off the racks. I've got to hire one of these guys, fly them out, you know, have them do the work, and then fly them back in again. So, you know, a job of a carpenter, you know, plumbers, builders, these jobs, these hands-on skills allow you to earn an income. You don't have to take on huge amounts of debt. I'm going to go out on a limb and just make an assumption that a carpentry course, a high-quality carpentry course, you can probably get, you know, such a course for maybe a couple of £1,000
Mhm.
in total. And you'll probably be able to do some work while you're training.
Mhm.
So, you know, as a plumber, you know, maybe 6 weeks into the training, maybe you'll be able to take, you know, odd jobs in the neighborhood, obviously charging less than a fully qualified plumber, but you're able to earn a bit of an income as you're going along. As let's say a trainee, petrochemical engineer, for all intents and purposes, you're useless until you get that degree. And as far as I hear, people are even still not particularly well suited to the job even after the degree. It then takes years of training by the company.
Yeah. So, I mean, I had someone who was questioning blue collar making more than doctors after a while, and what the hell? I mean, I've been qualified for a number of years. I don't know if people have any idea of what the running wages are for doctors in the UK or whatever. I mean, take home like money would be 2.7 grand a month. And that's following, what is it, 6 years, 2 degrees, and a couple of years training. Afterwards, then you rise in terms of how much money you make per year. Theoretically, the cap is that you will reach 100K every year. And you can supplement that by working perhaps locums and trying to make money, on top of that, or perhaps working privately.
Or clinical trials, being part of pharmaceutical industry clinical trials as a consultant, so patient recruitment. There are so many ways, but I do agree with you. It's that there is a theoretical cap on such a salary.
Someone he says that doctors in the UK make in the United States of America, they make 150K easy, right? I mean, I don't know what you consider easy and what the running debts are for these people. I'm presuming they have to do a pre-med degree, and afterwards they need to do another degree, and they need to work ridiculous hours. So you need to understand what you're actually taking home per hour and how much effort you're willing to put into it. I mean, I did calculate how much I made a year once in a chat with Barbaros, and I made close to 100 US dollars, 100K US dollars by working. But that was a lot of work, right? Sure, that's all I'm going to say. It wrecked me. And then the government takes 40%. You can't avoid tax because it all runs through the government. You don't have your own business. You don't have people running after you. You can't invest in yourself, and you're always liable for getting lawsuits. You're responsible for people's lives. Anything that goes wrong, you're always liable. So we have to understand the risks. And if someone, let's say, with a plumbing company makes 150K a year, I'm presuming he will take home close to that amount. And
I would maybe I do apologize for interrupting. So let's say, for example, your plumbing, you own a plumbing company. Let's say it's a one-man kind of operation, and you make 100K. So you have 20% business tax. So you're left with 80,000, and then if you pay yourself via dividends, then you have taxation on that as well. But the guy can expect to take home about £50,000 of that money. Now, I guess the thing to keep in mind is this: there's very little difference in your life quality as a single guy on 50 grand versus 150K. There's really maybe you have a bigger apartment with, instead of wooden floors, you have marble floors throughout. But there's very little difference in the food you can eat and the kind of restaurants you can go to, where you can travel to. Maybe you fly business class versus first class. Does it really matter? So I have a friend who's a radiologist in the States, and he earns close to it's just under $1 million a year as a radiologist. He earns an incredible amount, but to get there, as you correctly pointed out, not only did he have pre-med, med school, years of residency, as a radiologist, multiple trainings in radiation oncology, diagnostic radiology, therapy, all of the years and years and years of training. But he also then graduated with close to like $750,000 worth of debt. So, years of training before he could then work. And again, he made a decision that was good for him, and it's actually worked out. A lot of other doctors don't end up in that kind of identical situation. And there was a guy in the comment section, UA5489. He said, he's studying business administration in college, or what is the best field? So again, look, there's no, I don't think there's a good or a bad, you know, kind of degree, but I would always say, um, if you're studying business, you know, administration, find a good company who you can learn from. That really is it. So almost kind of forget the degree itself. Like still do it. You know, don't drop out or whatever, but focus on what you can learn after the degree. You know,
Mhm.
as Nico said, use it to get your foot in the door, and then focus on learning their business systems. What you want to do is to then be able to then use that job to either go up in the company, go to another company, but you want to be a problem solver. And from my experience, these kind of business administration type degrees don't help you become a real life day to day problem solver who can then just go in and just demand vast amounts of money from a company.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think, I mean, even when it comes to medicine, it's the same thing. You do graduate from med school and you have no idea, like the fear that you have the first day that you start working. And they did studies on this in the United Kingdom. I don't know if I told CS about this, but it was a big scandal afterwards when they first start doing the first day of the residency, let's say. The death rates climbed up. So
Absolutely.
every time, and there was nothing that was specifically to blame those doctors that were starting. They weren't making any big mistakes, but the experience is lacking, therefore they need some more support. And you do learn on the job, and that's why you need to continue training afterwards. But on what CS was saying, I mean, what is important to note is that if you're single, and I do advise every single guy to be single, at least for the duration, the first years before, after he graduates, after he gets his life started. I do advise everyone not to get married, but I'm not going to tell you what to do, in your bedrooms and all that, and when it comes to relationships. But at the beginning, you need to be single. You need to be able to make the sacrifices for yourself
Yeah.
in order to be able to be comfortable afterwards, to have the ability to be in a job that you don't hate, to be comfortable in yourself, to have an apartment, a living situation that you deem acceptable, and then you do what you want with that, right?
Precisely, and that's the you've hit the nail on the head there. As a single guy, if you're, Black Gnostics pointed out just in the chat there, he said, look, an electrical contractor makes 100,000 a year,
Yeah.
easy, and that's completely factual. Now, can you imagine having that kind of salary as a single guy with no debt? That's a beautiful fucking place to be in. Beautiful. No debt, you're making 100K, and you don't have somebody spending that money other than yourself. And after taxes, you'll probably be retired at the age of 55, just with the amount you're able to save, the amount you're able to invest. So again, I guess maybe our message today for a lot of the guys out there, young or old, whether you're a young 18-year-old guy just trying to just get your, kind of career started, or you're an older guy, don't overlook blue collar work. And maybe that's a fault that we've had as a society, that we, for some reason, I can't quite understand it. We don't give any respect to the electrician, to the plumber, to the carpenter, to the welder. These are incredibly, fulfilling jobs financially, emotionally. You make good friends. They're male dominated, which for me is just a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it is. And when you do end up at blue collar jobs, I mean, where I come from originally, and when I was growing up, perhaps there were too many people doing this kind of job. Perhaps they were looked down because women did not appreciate them as much. People were not making as much money because of them. But right now, it is very, very different. The reality in the world that we live in is very different to what it used to be. So people working blue collar jobs, they make good money. They have stable income that goes through. Their jobs don't really shake that much because you have a plumber. You're usually gonna require them as much as you're gonna require them a year. Maybe you can try and learn from YouTube to do a quick fix on your own, but generally speaking, companies would outsource those kind of, let's say, jobs to plumbing companies or whatever else. So the income is pretty much stable, and you can invest that. And that's what I wanted to get on to. And CS is much better at this than I am. I'm still young. I don't have enough money to invest, man. So, that's one of the main issues. And I spend the money on a car or stupid things because I just want to enjoy it.
Crack cocaine and whoring.
Yeah, that's what I do. Crack cocaine and whoring. A bit of weed just to calm down afterwards. But what I'm saying is, this is what we talked about before, and this is advice that you gave me personally when we were chatting. Not within a hangout, let's say, setting. And you were saying that a man must be able to have passive income in his life. If he's able to retire or do what he wants in his life, you do need to have some passive income. What do you mean by that?
Absolutely. That for me is the key difference between being able to live a good quality of life and being able to live an exceptional quality of life. Because of course, not all of us are going to be blessed enough just with, just the gifts of, I guess intellect or whatever to, maybe earn $1 million, a year or whatever. So that's really where a passive income becomes just so incredibly important. So the ability to, when you're sleeping, still have money coming in, and you can either save this money, you can do other things. And I know, for example, that day we spoke, I gave you just a couple of examples of what I would do in your situation. So, if let's say hypothetically, we have a guy who's maybe he has, well, let's see here, an extra £200, or something a month to put aside. I wouldn't recommend saving that money. I would actually recommend investing it, just simply because at the moment with savings, you're getting 0% return, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Don't say that. You get 1%. It's high, 1.4 sometimes. I'm just telling you from experience. But anyway,
sure,
you're getting absolutely nothing in return. Yeah,
for sure. Well, I'll give you just a kind of a real life scenario of what I have with my bank. Pre-recession, so like I think 2006, I would earn interest of at least 400 or 500 a month on what I had in my in one of my UK accounts. Now it barely registers just because interest it's 0.1% or something. It's something it's something ridiculous. So interest is a passive income. So let's say, for example, we're in a high interest environment. You're able to get 7 or 8%, a year on your money. That's a good solid passive income, because of course you have compound interest over time, and you're simply getting richer the more you save. So that makes a lot of sense. And then we have the issue which we have now is, how do you invest as a guy in a low interest environment where the stock market is particularly choppy? There are only maybe 4 or 5 asset classes doing well. One of them is mortgages, because of low interest. So how do you invest? And that's for example, I said to you the other day, look, what I would do is that I would always say this: debt is absolutely wonderful. But particularly, if you're using that debt to do something productive. So let's say, for example, you're buying an asset which is going to return you 5% a year, but you're paying 4% on that debt. That makes a lot of sense. So we use the example of property. So for example, if you have a particularly good credit rating, you're able to maybe get some kind of a deposit together. You buy a property of some sort. Perhaps you're, particularly now, all-time low interest rates, you get some kind of a fixed rate for 20 years or so, and then you're able to then sublet those rooms in the house. Maybe you buy a 3-bedroom of some sort, you live in the house for free, and then the other tenants are then paying the mortgage. That for me is a very, very intelligent use of debt. You benefit from a low debt environment, and then also you take the position, which I think is very, very sound, that you only take on debt when somebody's paying you to take on that debt. And in that situation, that the people you have living in the home who you've sublet your home to are paying you to take on that risk and that debt, and they're helping you to finance it. So that makes a lot of sense. There are a lot of asset classes these days that you can just put money in and expect a return. And again, that's a function of the fact that we are in a very, very low interest environment. Government bonds are often a negative yield these days, which is absolutely insane for a retail investor to get into. As an institutional investor, negative interest is okay, because the hope is that they'll flip the bond back to the central bank after 6 months or something. So it often does make sense, because but the average retail investor can't get in on that kind of action. It's, so yeah. I mean, what I used to do for things like passive income is that I used to sell options. Now again, I wouldn't recommend options, for everyone, unless you really enjoy mathematics and just sitting in front of computer screens and plotting standard deviation curves for stock distribution prices. It may not be for you, but if you enjoy maths, then selling derivatives is beautiful. So just to give you an example, I mean, what I would often sell is let's say, for example, Google has an earnings announcement in a couple of days. Well, the volatility is going to be huge on that particular position. When volatility is high, the price of options are high. So I will then go and sell that particular position. I'll construct, a defined risk position. So maybe I'm selling a call and a put, and then I'm also buying a call and a put to make sure I have defined risk. I sell that position. I wait for a volatility contraction, and I literally buy the position back the moment the earnings announcement. So maybe I sell for $2 and I buy it back for $1.50, and you're selling so many contracts, and you're basically making money through that position through actually doing no work. But so again, that passive income is absolutely essential, absolutely essential. And I would wholeheartedly recommend that, even in addition to your day job, as it were. If you plan to retire, get a passive income stream, whether that's investing in somebody else's business that you can focus on maybe a day a month, just to see that they're running it well, and you're getting some kind of a dividend. Whether that's putting money in a high interest account, if you can still access one these days in the country you're in, whether that's some kind of a mortgage that you're getting people to then live in the house, and then you're getting them to then pay off the mortgage while you live in a room or something free. This gives you passive income, and that's really what I think every man should aim for if you plan to retire at one point.
Yeah, and I guess for someone, let's say, with my level of knowledge, right? And we had this discussion before. I have no idea about maths. I don't plot graphs. I don't know shit. I know how much money I have in my account. I know how much money is coming out of my account, more or less, not even that accurately. I know I'm okay most of the time. If I overdo it a month, then I might be running a bit low, but that's okay. I get paid another month. So for someone with that level of understanding, I guess something which is concrete, like perhaps property, something like that might be a good investment for him. Or let's say, or a young man that, I mean, the UK now is not in the best environment, let's say, for investing in property, not for being a landlord, at least.
Again, it depends. What the UK tends to punish now, when you look at the taxation on properties, I know, because I remember last year I was going to buy a couple of units up near Middlesbrough to then rent it out to students there, and I was going to benefit off the spread. The UK tends to punish second home ownership. So your first home is completely fine if you live there, but then there's a high taxation, punitive taxation, in my opinion, on the second property. They didn't want individuals owning 20, 30 properties, because it reduced supply, and of course that pushed up prices, so it made housing unaffordable. But if, for example, you live in the property, particularly if you're not in one of the bigger cities, I don't, for example, think it's a good idea to buy in London. I think it's overvalued. There's absolutely no value there.
Yeah.
But other cities, whether it's Coventry, whether it's Glasgow, some of these other cities, particularly where they're building the kind of high speed rail networks, makes a lot of sense. Particularly if you don't mind sharing a house. If you live in the home, if it's your primary residency, then you'll get a whole heap of tax breaks. And maybe that's the other thing. Then, if you plan to retire, you have to learn to work effectively within the current tax environment. So there are two kind of ways to look at it. You can either be somebody who hates taxes and is punished by it, or you can be an individual who really learns it and understands what position can I have that the government will pay me to hold by giving me a tax break. So, for example, one of those positions is gold. Gold is completely tax-free. So if I bought the same amounts of stock as I did in gold, I lose out, versus, the stock, just simply because any capital gains I have on the stock, I have to, I have to make a tax declaration for. It's not the same with gold.
Mm-hmm.
So the government are, in a sense, giving me a discount for holding a gold position or a precious metal position, which is why some of the some of my personal investments are in precious metals, just simply because it's more tax efficient. So I think that then the onus, of course, is always on us as men to make sure we do our research, and you're holding positions that punish you less in terms of taxes. So, for example, if the government has said, look, this particular asset class is going to be tax free, I would then start looking at that asset class.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You see, that's kind of like solid advice that I would never be able to give to anyone. That's why I wanted to do this, because you know these things, and that's why I call you from time to time and ask very strange questions. I had someone who asked what year, at what age does starting med school not become worth it? I mean, it depends why you're in med school, right?
Yes.
I think if you want to do it for the fun of it, any age would do, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. If you have the money to, just let it sit there and you're able to pretty much go about it without taking any debt, then any age is pretty much worth it. But if you want to do it in order to make money, perhaps it's better to start a bit early.
Yes.
So that you have room to develop. And by early, I mean like 18. You can do it up to the age of 24. Let's say if you graduate at the age of 30, that's all right. And I'm talking specifically about the UK, and the UK doesn't have a pre-med course. You start with 5 years of uni or 6 years of uni. You graduate with 1 or 2 degrees, and then you're set on a career path after that. But if you do graduate at 30 or 35, you would be a 35-year-old making, at the beginning, £2,000 a month, right? 2.1 thousand pounds a month. And then it will jump the next year to 2.7 or 2.6, something like that. And that's all there is to it. There's not a lot of money to be made from that. And with the way that things work now, you do pile up a lot of debt, even
Absolutely.
in the UK.
Absolutely. Carlos Rodriguez just asked, what are your thoughts on a degree in psychology? What are your thoughts there, Nika?
Well, that's right up my alley. It depends what you get your degree in psychology. I mean, most psychologists are employed in the NHS originally. They do see patients in outpatients clinics, and they do a lot of work with them. It's very demanding, very hardcore. I don't know how much money they make and what their running wages are. Perhaps you can run a private practice, but I think it's not going to be more. It's probably going to be a bit less than what you can make as a doctor, let's say, or a psychiatry consultant. So it's going to be less than 100K. But there's a lot of job satisfaction that comes from it. And this is what I get from a lot of the psychologists that I talk to. They do help a lot of people that are in very dire situations, that have a lot of problems, physical, psychological, etc., and they do help them out. So there is job satisfaction that comes from that. On the negative, it's a very feminine-dominated field, very female-centric. So that is something that you need to keep in mind if you're thinking about, going into psychology.
Absolutely, I would agree with you there. I would agree with you there. It's
someone's asking, why do so many women go into psychology or English? I think it's because they imagine it's a course where they get to talk a lot and tell people what to do.
For sure. For sure. And it also, because there are many branches to psychology. If you go into clinical psychology, it's a very, very different gig from the kind of, let's say, basic talk therapy, as it were. So, it's a very, very different profession.
Yeah, but you make a lot more money in talk therapy.
Oh yes, absolutely. And I guess you probably have just a far better work-life balance as well.
Well, I guess so. You work a 9 till 5 job. It will be packed from beginning to end every day, but you'll be taking home, a good wage. If you're looking for a career that you're gonna get a big and good payout at the end of it, uh, I don't see psychology as being one of those professions.
I agree. I mean, Kyrie just kind of pointed out early on, and I agree with him completely. He said, look, part of the reason we look down, or no, I don't, but maybe part of the reason that kind of general society looks down on blue collar work is because women haven't kind of validated it.
Mhm.
And I do agree with him there that we've got to get out of that mindset. I'm not saying go into blue collar work. I'm just saying keep your options open. For me, it is a solid place to go into, particularly because you can have a lot of money. Often you get to choose your own hours. It's male dominated, so there are lots and lots of advantages. But if you're not competing in the kind of sexual dominance hierarchy, you can do work which won't force you to sit in front of a computer all day. In fact, maybe that's one of my gripes with with what I do for a living. I would rather be outside lifting heavy things than sitting in front of a computer screen all day.
Yep.
Then I'm getting a bit of a workout. I'm, getting some sunshine. I'm just staring in front of a fucking screen all day.
Mhm.
So, hey, everything, I guess, of course, has its trade-offs.
And we had someone that asked, I mean, how you can. I mean, they mentioned about savings, etc. And I don't want to talk down on savings. I mean, or the specific job that I'm doing. I guess as a single man, if you make close to, let's say, high end of £2,000 a month, so let's say 2.9, 2.7, 2.8, something along those lines, or 3,000, and that's early on in your 20s or later on in your 20s. If you're living by yourself, you're single, you're paying rent, etc., you can theoretically save up to £1,000 a month. And I've trialed it. It is working, and it can work for people. I've done it before. I'm not doing it now because I don't want to work that much. I don't care enough to be doing that. But you can save up to £1,000 a month. That's going to be at least close to £10,000 a year. Maybe it will be a bit more. Within 2-3 years, then you have £30,000. £30,000 you can invest into buying property, and then you can start getting some passive income, and you can start reducing your working hours.
Oh, no, I was just saying, sorry to interrupt. Please go ahead.
No. All I was going to say is that then all the money that you're saving, then you can invest in other avenues to keep getting some more money in return. You can put more payments down to your mortgage. You can get people to pay back the mortgage, and you can start living a much more comfortable life.
Yeah,
At the
agree.
end, you need more money, or you want to move at a better home, you can sell off that property, you can buy another one.
Absolutely. And maybe I should also say I'm not a huge fan of savings.
Mm.
I think savings have their role, but what a lot of people seem to do, which I don't think is particularly a good way to kind of retire, is that they'll say, I'm going to save money for my retirement. And then, but by the time retirement comes, and I have some older friends who are in this situation, maybe they've saved like 100 grand.
Yeah.
When you're young, 100 grand seems like a lot of money. It's not. Like it's simply not a lot of cash. It's or certainly certainly not for retirement. So
But if you're
that's
planning on living, no.
exactly. So and saving 100 grand is also very challenging for most professions. After taxes, after particularly if let's say a guy's blue pill, he has a family. Getting 100K together over the years takes a lot of effort. What I would say is, instead of so let's say, for example, if you're able to save, let's say, £1,000 a year or something. Let's say you're able to, or let's say in dollars, maybe it's $2,000 or something. A year in savings. What I would do in that situation is that I would get 2 or 3 years of savings together and then put that towards investing in somebody's businesses,
Mhm.
doing things, getting passive income streams where, for example, you do invoice financing. It's something I was looking for. I mean, there are all these companies now. So, companies, maybe sign a deal with one of their suppliers, and the invoice isn't going to clear for 60 days. They need that money straight away. So you form a pool with people to to advance them some of that money, and then when the invoice is then paid into their account, you get a percentage in addition to your money back. So that's what I would start looking at versus savings. And somebody pointed out that David Rickard, he said, what about pensions? Precisely. So I would much rather personally put that money in a pension every single month than put it in savings. Not only is the pension going to be at least nominally linked to the stock exchange, so you benefit in the good years. For sure, you'll have to take the losses in the bad years. That's part and parcel of the way life works. But often the government will then, so what they often do is they'll say, look, for every pound you put into your pension, they're going to put in an extra 20 pence or something. That's amazing. When you think about it, when you put that money into a savings account, you're being taxed on that money. So you're losing out on taxation on that money. You're not getting a good interest rate. You're not exposed to the upsides of the stock market or to the bond market. So you're losing in 3 or 4 ways, in addition to losing out on inflation. Yeah. So for me, a far more sensible way there would be to get it in some kind of and not all of your money. I mean, you don't want to put all of your money in a pension. Get some of it in some kind of a pension. Then you benefit from having no tax on that pension. You benefit on the fact that your employer will probably match the amount you put into your pension. The government will then give you a further amount on top. So, and then you're able to cash that in at the age of 50 or 60. Now, of course, you shouldn't rely on that pension, that can't support you fully. But for me, it's a far smarter thing to do than to simply put it in savings.
And you can look at specifically what kind of pensions choices you have within the given companies that you work in. If you're self-employed, of course, you need to look at private pensions. I know people that have that work in the NHS and have a private pension and an NHS pension, and the NHS pension is actually pretty good.
Oh yeah, right? for sure, absolutely.
It gives you a very good return at the end. You are comfortable enough to live afterwards. And most of the people just cash it out, buy a house in, I don't know, any Mediterranean country, and they go and live there for the rest of their lives. Right. So there is that benefit from it. But you can also have another private pension, or you can invest the money in property, and then you can sell off that property for when that time comes. When I look at things like that, I try to look at, money loses its value over time. It's the nature of inflation, and that's how it is. But you can theoretically buy assets that won't lose value over time. Maybe gold would be one of those things. Maybe you can get property, which you can sell. Maybe having some stocks in companies, or that's perhaps the only things that you can do in terms of having that. But the value of money does go down over time. And if you're expecting the value of, let's say, £20 would be the same in the next, let's say, 20, 30 years when you need to, utilize your pension, I think you'd be thoroughly disappointed.
For sure. And I guess also, I mean, we're talking about how to make money, but just as important for a man in particular, because society is not going to bend over backwards if you get into a hard place. So, for example, if you happen to lose money, if things don't work out, like you're on your own. That's the way our species works. So what I always say to guys, I always say this even to friends and family, is how you spend your money is just as important as how much you make. So for example, the way I manage my own kind of money is, I mean, people just think I'm insane. So if you go into my cupboards, you'll see like 2 years supply of toilet paper. Well, because if I buy when I buy it in that size, it costs next to nothing.
Yeah.
I have enough soap to use for the next 2-3 years before the thing expires. So I'm not.
Soap doesn't expire. I don't know why people believe that.
But you know what I mean. So
yeah.
I don't have to make small regular purchases every single month, and buying things from supermarkets is the most expensive way to buy things in most situations. Supermarkets exist to break bulk. So what they do is that they buy something really, really cheaply, they bring it in, and they break bulk so that you can go in once a week to then pay 3 times as much, for, a sandwich or something, or a bar of soap that maybe costs you, €3, So what I always do personally is, light bulbs, I'll buy them in such bulk, I'll shop around, I'll get the cheapest cost per unit, toilet paper, anything that I use on a regular basis. I never buy from supermarkets. The only thing I'll shop to buy from a supermarket ever, is
Food.
just absolutely just the fresh stuff.
Hmm.
But everything else, I would always say to guys, if you can buy it in extreme bulk. Toilet paper is never going to go off. If you can get toilet paper at, like, how much did I buy the stuff that I have in my bathroom now? Maybe like 20 pence per roll or something. Something ridiculous.
Mhm.
When I kind of bought it in that level of bulk.
And it's the same. I mean, you can, I don't know how it works in the United States, from what I know, you can buy a lot more things in bulk. And we have Costco in the UK as well, because I saw
I still
someone
would.
that
I wouldn't. I would buy from the guys who sell to Costco. They'll sell to you. So if you go in and say, look, I want 500 plies of toilet paper, they'll happily sell to you, and you'll get
but
it at that price.
you need space to store that. I mean,
Oh,
unless you
sure.
sleep on top of it, you can replace the mattress with it. But you need some space in order to be able to do all that. And if
For
you live in
sure.
the city, you need to be a bit more, I guess, rational when it comes to that. Costco is a good
For
place.
sure.
They give access to, let's say, NHS. You can go and get in. So you can go and buy a lot of things in bulk. It's going to be my new thing that I'm going to be doing that. Because for now, and you know how I live, I usually eat out. My expenditure is ridiculous when it comes to food. I pay over £150. I used to pay over £150 a week on food, just to survive. So yeah, you can definitely reduce your expenditure and make sure that you're saving a lot more, or
For sure.
you're keeping a lot more of the money that you're working.
For sure. Well, I'll give you an example. So the other day, I was making a dish, and there was something I needed to go and get from the supermarket. I think it was sweet, paprika or something. So I just had to go there and pick it up. And there was a lady in front of me in the queue, and she'd bought this small bag of rice. Like maybe the thing's £2 or something. And I thought, yeah, that's 500, grams. I mean, you realize you can get a 50-kilo pack of this stuff for about 20 quid. But that's I guess the kind of thinking that really, really helps people.
and,
That
and it doesn't look good in the kitchen.
yeah, but if you have some place to store it away, the
Yeah,
thing will last forever.
absolutely.
And as long as you're careful with the expiry dates, and so the way we shop as men needs to reflect the fact that one day perhaps we'll want to retire. We won't want to, to literally work ourselves to death. So I always buy in bulk, and that's just helped me massively keep my
Yeah, and
costs low, and it just allow me more money to invest, to save, or just have a good time.
canned products, etc., they keep forever. Canned
Absolutely.
products, I have friends who buy protein shakes or whatever. You can buy, like, I don't know, 100,000 kilos of that will never go off, right? And canned products, they never go off. Theoretically, nothing goes off that's canned and zipped in a bag that is airproof, and you cannot really gain access. If it's not fresh, it basically keeps forever. And you can prepare yourself for the zombie apocalypse if that is to come. So that there is that added benefit for
Yeah,
that,
you're
on
declaring
top
war
of
on
the
the.
financial. Yeah.
You can declare war on the government if you want. Yeah.
But you can completely cut yourself off. If you have enough of that kind of stuff, you can theoretically go for months without even needing to buy anything. And of course, I'm not suggesting that, but
Sure.
it is something that you can do. I'm suggesting 5 fruits and veg. I think now the advice is 7 fruits and veg. I don't know how you can eat that in a day,
For
but I'm
sure.
suggesting that, and having regular bowel movements, it's good for you.
For sure. And again, one of the best pieces of advice I received when I think I was maybe over 16 or something at the time. An older friend who was very, very financially successful said to me, look, never buy new when you can buy used that does the same thing. You know, so if you, for example, want to buy a motor vehicle, please don't buy a new one.
But it smells better.
Sure, I'm sure it does, my friend.
But what I'm saying is, guys, I mean, when it comes to these things, and you know, we do have different tastes, etc., and you can always do everything to absolutely save. But I think every single one of us needs to at least enjoy one or two things. You know, lash out. You know, spend some money where you know that you want to enjoy. Oh, I was on a chat with TFM. He likes to buy gadgets all the fucking time, right? I like to buy gadgets all the fucking time too. I wanted to buy a new vehicle. I did that. You know, you have your own things. You know, you can elaborate on what those are. I'm not going to say for you, but all of us have things that we would rather, you know, pay a bit more to get something better than, you know, let's say used product or whatever. It's a shame that you can't do the same thing when it comes to women.
For sure, for sure. Somebody just asked, I mean, you wouldn't buy a new car. So I'm not suggesting that if you're in a great financial situation that you shouldn't buy a new car. I wouldn't personally buy a new car just simply because the moment you drive it off the car showroom, you lose a percentage of its value. And I specifically look for value.
10K down the drain as soon as you drive off.
Absolutely. But again, if you're earning a lot and that isn't a lot of money to you, then it's a very, very different situation. And you know, as Nico said, we all have individual things. You know, I have a hobby which is eye-wateringly expensive, and in that particular aspect of my life, then yeah, I'll spend a ludicrous amount. So to be honest with you.
And things I don't understand. I'm like, why? But yeah, all of us have our quirks
Sure.
when it comes to, you know, spending a little bit more money. But that's what makes life worth living. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, you need to enjoy the kind of thing. Maybe, you know, it is a hobby. Maybe it is, you know, buying gadgets. Maybe it is, you know, buying new vehicles or whatever. You know, it doesn't matter as long as you have the money to be able to do that. If you don't, I mean, yeah, you can't do it. But it is working towards being able to do that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
How long have we been talking? I think it's been like almost an hour. I mean, it's a good point in time to ask for people, I think, to ask specific questions. Or, you know, I think you'll be excellent in giving very specific advice when it comes to investment.
Sure.
Not very specific, but, you know, more specific than, let's say, me.
Sure. Buy Apple at 1800 or that kind of advice.
No. Don't do that. You'll be blamed.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. No, I mean, no, I agree with Black Gnostic Speaks that free hobbies are probably better.Ure, absolutely. I don't disagree with you there.
Yeah.
And Blood Moon said, worshipping Lucifer makes his life worth living. Okay. That's interesting, I guess.
Is that the question for me that you're saying it's interesting? Right now I'm eating really sour sweet. That's really painful. How did I get to be such a badass? And I was just born with it.
Nice.
It just came naturally. There's nothing badass in the advice of the passing. Yeah, I think I'm eccentric more than badass. Christy, no.
Christy, bro, we can't start over. There's just been so much covered. But again, I just think that the issue is this for men. You don't necessarily have to go into IT. IT, of course, is a nice profession, but I would just say avoid professions if possible where that can be outsourced, because at one point you may be, you may literally have to train, the dude halfway across the world who then takes your job. And yeah, so a lot of the kind of hands-on professions really help. UA 5489 asked, after college, should I look to buy a condo or basic apartment for my future? I think that's a great question. What I would personally say is this: if you have the money to buy a condo, and you can, so for example, in certain parts of the UK now where the property market isn't great, you can buy units cheaper than the build price. So maybe the house literally is on sale for 50,000, but it costs about 80,000 just to build that kind of unit. So if you're keen to get it, to get some exposure into property, then that's a good idea. What I wouldn't advocate or recommend, or what I wouldn't do myself, is to buy a unit that I can, just build for cheaper, particularly if I factor in, getting the land and planning permission and that kind of thing. If it's somewhere for you to live, then the same applies. So again, if you can buy a unit for 100 grand, but it costs 120 to build the thing, then it makes far more sense. But in most situations, particularly in Western societies now, I don't think housing. I think there are issues with housing. You've got to kind of take it on a case by case basis. Again, in the big city of London, would I buy a home? Absolutely not. In somewhere like Coventry, where you have lots and lots of universities nearby, or Middlesbrough, where I can rent that unit out to students, particularly if I can then stay in there at no cost to myself and declare it as my primary residence, I get a tax break, then for sure it makes a lot of sense. But again, it's just about the situation. So no one piece of advice is ever universal in investing.
There was someone who asked about Nico and CS. How do you feel about prepping? Is it just being paranoid or being smart? Well, I'm presuming we're talking about prepping for the zombie apocalypse or something. Well, I recently was attacked by the flu virus, and I felt like I was gonna die. So I would say I would say there's nothing that you can really do in order to prepare yourself if something of that nature does come along, right? If you want to prepare yourself for, like, I don't know, reducing your costs, etc., or perhaps living smart, that's all right. If you overdo it to the point that some people do, you build your own underground space and you stock up years and years and years of supplies and all that.
Particularly when the person then starts sending the government threats.
Yeah, that's usually that's usually a sign of paranoid schizophrenia.
Invincible Summer asks us, I live in the USA. Is an MBA worth pursuing, or is it a worthless degree? And how much would you pay for it? That's a great question. So the way I would look at it is this: if you want to have an MBA, if I wanted an MBA, what I would do is that I would seek employment in a company that I know has a history of developing their staff. So, for example, I used to work for a large company called Informa. They had this kind of reputation. And after a certain amount of years there, usually about 2 years, you qualify to have them pay for you to do an MBA. And if you left the company, then of course you had to pay it back. You had to pay a certain amount. They took a certain amount out of your paycheck every single month, and they allowed you to work for them, earning an income. They paid for your MBA, and of course you had a guaranteed, job. Well, you were still working all through it. So that to me makes a lot of sense. Getting somebody else to pay it, it's essentially like just a loan from your employer. That makes a lot of sense. And then if you then do want to go to another company, and I've seen this a couple of times as well, if you say, look, I would like to join you, but I have loan debt, to my other company, they'll often offer to pay a percentage of it off for you. So they'll say, okay, well, if you agree to join us as a bit of a kind of sweetheart deal, we'll pay 40% of it off. So again, would I go and simply do an MBA? I wouldn't pay for it out of my own pocket. I would want somebody else to pay for it. But again, that's just my mentality, that I'm happy to take on a position of debt if somebody's paying me to take on that position.
I mean, people keep talking about the apocalypse and whether you're not being paranoid if it's true and we're coming to Europe, inevitable or hyperbole. I think everyone just Well, how would we know? I can't really predict what's going to happen a second from now unless I'm farting, right? So I can't really tell you what what exactly is going to happen or whether it's going to happen. I mean, I have produced some content before where I did predict that theoretically, the way that things are and with the disenfranchisement of men in general, that there is a possibility that we will have war breaking out, etc. But I think at the stage that we're in, with the kind of resources that governments have, etc. right now, if a war breaks out, it's goodbye and who cares.
Absolutely. If there is a war, your bunker won't help you.
Yeah.
That maybe is the thing to keep in mind.
Yeah.
In fact, your bunker may make you a target because it's a safe space.
Hmm.
So the desire of somebody perhaps to kind of break in and then live there against your will. But again, I simply hope we do. I hope we don't have a war.
Well, I think the chances are right now is that we won't, at least for the near future, not at least a big war. Maybe the UK will attack someone, the US will definitely attack someone. They do that every so many years. So, that's going to happen. Perhaps, looking for a career away from the army is a good advice at this point. But yeah, I don't think you should plan for the very worst situation. It's good to plan for your personal bad situation, have some money to fall back into, have some food left over like rice, etc., just in case you do run out of money, if you take a really risky position or something along those lines. Do be prepared, but not so prepared that you're just wasting your time, or you live in a world which is not really reality anymore.
For sure. Get Al, I hope I pronounced that correctly, has just asked probably one of the strangest questions I've come across. He's asked, "What about a house in the Maldives?" I hope you understand that the Maldives is going to disappear. Like it's literally like the rising sea levels. I think in about 30 years it's going to be gone. Or sorry,
Same
but
with
I'm
Netherlands.
certainly within the next century. I certainly wouldn't recommend buying a home on what will be essentially your seabed in about 100 years. I don't know if that's such a good idea, bro.
So yeah. We always end up talking about these things. Do you guys have any more questions? Anything else? Because we have the expert here. I mean, you can also find him at his channel as well.
I'm no expert. Maybe I can only ever say what I do myself, but I don't think I'm an expert though. Get Al seems quite sad. I don't know if he's sad about the Maldives disappearing underwater or that he can't
Yeah, I think in that case the UK won't also be gone. I don't really know. If it does go underwater and there's a bit of land and I'm alive, I'm guessing I'll be treating patients. I don't know.
Absolutely. Giving mouth to mouth to the attractive women.
Yes, or dick to mouth. Right. Will any of you be coming to Australia for a meetup?
I don't have any plans to visit Australia. I really, really like the country, but just the flight time. What about yourself, Nika?
Well, I like Australia. I was planning to perhaps go and work there, especially with the situation right now in the UK and the junior doctor contract. I don't really fancy working too much, not making a lot of money. And okay. Australia, they seem to fancy not working very much and making a lot of money. So, absolutely. It sounds like a good place to go. So perhaps that can happen in the future. Bloodmoon is asking you, why do you agree with the Austrian economic model?
I don't. I don't actually agree with the Austrian economic model. The issues that I see, the Austrian economic model, or very specifically the Austrian theory of the business cycle, held for a very, very specific time in history, very specifically the start of the 20th century. We had a very, very different money supply. So right now you have a money supply with M1, M2, M3, M4, and MO, and a government or multiple governments can engage in rampant monetary expansion, as we've seen with quantitative easing. And if the money doesn't go into MO and M1, so if banks aren't then using that money to then make loans, you won't necessarily have the price rise as predicted by the Austrian economic model. So that's why I don't agree with the Austrian economic model.
Mm. And last question from UA5489. What was the most difficult adversity you both had faced? Since you answered the last one, I mean, I can go first. I mean, I'm for it.
Sure.
If anything, to this land, I know you are too, I guess.
Sure.
Initially, at least for the early parts. I don't know if you still are. Do you have the citizenship?
No, I have an English citizenship, but when I go back to Nigeria, I'm going to get my a Nigerian passport, actually, just because I just can't be bothered to queue for a visa to go to my own country.
Yeah, I understand. So I still don't have British citizenship, and the most difficult thing is coming to any country, I guess, and starting new from scratch and having no one around and needing to create your own kind of like circle of friends, start building from scratch, having people that tell you that you're stealing their jobs and not appreciating you, having people that you're helping be racist to you, etc. That was one. In my early years, I've talked about, what happened with my father and all that. But yeah, that's it. Pretty average and pretty normal, nothing special, if I have to say. How about you, man?
Probably colorectal cancer. That was very, very difficult. Took me many, many years psychologically to accept the fact that I was now okay. Yeah, so that's been it for me. And Christy Nell's going to be building a UFO. Hell yeah, love that.
Yeah, come and pick me up. I don't know where you are, but fly over the UK.
Nice.
I'll be in the big circle with the with the head of. Of the wolf right there. So yeah, just pick me up from there. I'll spray paint it on on the ceiling.
Absolutely.
So just get I think that's it. I want to keep this chat short because I think if it goes over an hour and a half or an hour and 15 minutes, 20 minutes or so, people find it quite daunting. So it's easier for them to have a listen and just enjoy the wonderful information that CS has provided today.
Oh, and that you've provided, for sure.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you found this useful. Join us again at some point about the red pill with Rollo. I'm not sure when that's happening. CS has asked me as well about this. I've come to some busy times. I'm working very hard. And he's busy as well with his job. So I'm not sure when that will happen. So thank you guys for tuning in. Any last words?
Oh, well, just, enjoy yourself, guys. It's please try to have some fun while buying, 500 rolls of toilet paper and 2,000 tins of soup. Please enjoy yourself.
Yeah, and put all those things in your brand new car. Right. Thank you very much for listening, guys.
Thanks, guys.